Hello and welcome back to the NUFC Opinion Blog for the January monthly podcast. I'm joined by my now regular podcast co-analyst, co-host, however you want to call it, Dylan Pick. How are we, Dylan?
I'm not bad, Daniel. Thanks for getting us on. How are you doing?
No problem, mate. I'm absolutely fine. Certainly all the better after today's result. We'll come to that a bit later on in the discussion. But, of course, this is January's podcast. And so we're going to start just by having a chat about all the games that have gone through and happened this month. It hasn't exactly been the best month now, has it?
No, definitely not. I mean, obviously, we're in a lot higher appraisal today just because of what we've seen, which we'll get on to a bit later on. But yeah, it was a bit doom and gloom throughout January, to be fair.
Yeah, certainly. We didn't score. I think if you include today,
We've doubled our tally today, I think.
Yeah, I think we have done. Yeah, I think we only scored two goals before that in January. So yeah. First game we had in January was on the 3rd. It was a Sunday and it was at home to Leicester. We lost that 2-1 at home. So, Leicester are a good side and doing well this season, have done for the past couple of seasons. So a 2-1 loss at home wasn't the end of the world, but considering that, it wasn't a terrible performance. And Andy Carroll got a goal and we had a chance to maybe nick something at the end. It may be a bit disappointing. I don't know what you thought on that one.
Yeah, I thought at the start, I don't think we were actually set up that bad. Like you say, obviously Leicester are a good team, and however you want to say it, if Leicester should be a lot higher than Newcastle is a completely separate argument. But on paper, you would probably take a draw in a game like that. But I mean, in terms of creativity, I mean, obviously we scored at the end with Andy Carroll. I remember we did push for it for the last kind of 5 to 10 minutes, but it just was all Leicester, and obviously the goals eventually came for them and broke us down.
Yeah,
but like I say,
I believe it was it Maddison and Tielemans, I think, who got the goals.
It was a great goal from Tielemans
Maddison
as well.
And Tielemans, yeah. There were some good finishes, and it's to be expected. They've got some good players, Leicester. Obviously the likes of Jimmy Vardy, James Maddison, Tielemans, etc. I was a Perez, former Newcastle player. I mean, he hasn't exactly been firing on all cylinders for Leicester of late, Perez. So I wonder what the issue is there. But
I don't know if he's a big hit with the fans. I don't know. And I mean, in fairness, he wasn't with us really until the end when he started pulling his boots off.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Perez often divides opinion because when he's on it, he can be really good. When he's not, he can be woeful.
But he can go missing very easily.
Yeah, he can very easily, and you'll just not hear from him for game. I think the thing at Newcastle was he always started a season. The first half of the season was terrible, and then the second half he suddenly hit his stride.
He'd go on a bit of run of form, score maybe 3 or 4 goals in a row, and then just looks the hero every season.
I know. Obviously, at the moment, he maybe isn't doing it for Leicester, but to be honest, for Leicester, that's probably the least of their worries because they're sitting quite happily in the top half of the league, doing very well.
He's a backup player for them, whereas he ended up being a main player for us. So
exactly, it shows just how far a club like Leicester have come. Like Leicester are, in my opinion, that their club sizes they're nowhere near as big as Newcastle. But
no.
For them to be the way they are, with a good manager like Brendan Rodgers, challenging for Champions League places every season, credit to them. The ownership and the fan connection with the ownership there is absolutely fantastic. And hats off to the sort of dynasty they've created there after winning the Premier League in 15-16. They've really built on that and secured a lot of good finishes in the Premier League since, I think, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone's got a bit of a soft spot for Leicester now since the league, when you do want to see the smaller teams kind of jump into that big six. And they're obviously smashing it at the minute. So like I say, whether you actually think Leicester should be a lot bigger than Newcastle on paper is probably a different argument. But going into that game, you would take a draw and, a couple of great goals from them. Yes, it
was nice to see Andy Carroll get on the score sheet. Of course, his first goal back at Newcastle since, but of course it wasn't to be.
It is what it is. They're a good side. It's when we move on to the next Premier League game, who aren't a great side at the minute.
No, this was awful.
Bit of a shamble. I would probably go on record and say that is the worst performance I've seen any Newcastle team play in my life.
In my lifetime, yes. I'm sure there will have been other performances that were equally bad before our time, but certainly,
yes, definitely.
That was utterly awful. The 1-0 loss to Sheffield United, if that is what we're talking about, if you weren't already aware.
Yeah, didn't I?
On the 12th of January, the first half we just didn't get going at all. We sat. To be honest, Dylan, I think it all went wrong from the moment the lineup was announced. You could just tell.
Oh yeah, 100%.
It was a team that was set up to contain and try and hold on to a point or nick something at the end, which against a team who hadn't won a game all season was the complete wrong thing to do. Of course, it wasn't helped by the sending off of Ryan Fraser just before half time, but regardless of that, it wasn't good enough at all.
No, I mean, like you say, the way we're set up. We're set up as if we were playing Man City away with that team, and we allowed a fighting Sheffield United team, obviously, literally fighting for their spot in the Premier League at this point, play the game. I think did we record a chance in the first half? I don't recall.
I don't recall.
I know obviously Ryan Fraser got sent off, and it did hinder the second half with 10 men, but I mean, watching the first half and the second half, there wasn't a great deal of difference, to be honest. You'd think we would have been playing for 10 men for the start of the game, to be honest. It was a shambles. Carl Dollo, I think, had a massive performance in the first half as well. But
kept us in it, really, to be honest. But
yeah.
The fact that we're saying that against a team like Sheffield United hadn't won a game all season. We let them play. That's the thing. We look like the side too.
And it's not even Sheffield United. It's the position that they're obviously. Yeah, it's the points on the board at first.
That's the thing.
Yeah. Sorry, I think
there was a small.
It's what I was saying is I think I had about 2. Yeah, I think it's because I had 2 points on the board. Obviously, they haven't won all season, and you also take into consideration the famous Derby season that they're obviously the lowest points ever in a Premier League season. They also took points off us, so it's very typical of Newcastle.
It was very much reminiscent of that.
Play their game.
Of course, Sheffield United have gone on to record another win since. They have beaten Man United, which was it's a massive result for them. But whether I still don't see them getting out of it. To be honest, I think that they're still destined to go down. I mean, Chris Wilder in charge has done a fantastic job for them, and all credit to him. Like, Sheffield United were a side that were just languishing in the Championship, not really doing much. I think they've been down to League One at times as well. And to get them where they have been of late, certainly last season they had a great year. And, maybe it's that second season syndrome for them, the fact that they're not doing very well this year. But it was very reminiscent of Derby back in 2007-8 when, a team that hadn't won a game goes and beats. So it is typical Newcastle United. And in the next game, things didn't get any better because we went away to Arsenal, a team that we'd already been beaten 2-0 by in the FA Cup just a couple of days earlier. And then we got beaten 3-0 by them in the league. Once again, I thought in the first 10 minutes of this game, because this was the game when Steve Bruce said, the gloves are off and I'm going to do it my way after the horror show that was Sheffield United. The first 10 minutes seemed okay. We got on the ball a little bit, but then once Arsenal got into their stride, it just went back to what we've been used to of late, and it really was a dire watch. And 3-0
he set up in the 4-4-2. Obviously, you had Joe Linton and Almiron on the side, Wilson and Andy Carroll up top. He set up as he should have done the game before.
Exactly.
He set up the game before, obviously the game he should have done against this, which makes absolutely no sense. Obviously, like you mentioned, he said the gloves were off and we got absolutely hammered. He said we were going to do it his way. We got absolutely hammered. So his way we've been doing it for a season and a half just makes no sense. Obviously, Matty Longstaff came back in. I think Matty Longstaff he's been very underutilized, if I think to be honest, overall at the minute, because I think centre midfield is probably a position that we lack at the minute. I think he gives a lot of energy, and he obviously likes to push forward, which doesn't seem we have a lot of players doing, whether that's the coaching or just the players. I'm honestly not too sure at the minute. But yeah, Arsenal just, I mean, again, like the Leicester game, Arsenal are Arsenal at the end of the day. We will always struggle. I mean, I think it's been quite a few years since we've took anything from the Emirates.
I think the last time we got something at the Emirates was an Andy Carroll headed winner in 2010.
Yeah.
Which came just after the 5-1 win against Sunderland. It tells you just how poor our results have been in the capital at the Emirates. So,
Well, yeah, it's like if you said to me before the game, it's going to be a away loss to Arsenal. I mean, it's fair enough. Like I said, I can take that. I don't expect to win every game, but it's the way that we go about it, and it's the way that we show absolutely nothing through the game to suggest that we might even get a point. It's hopeless to watch at times.
Really is.
Like I said, I can take the result on the chin, but at least put some effort in. Do you know what I mean?
Half the time they don't look like scoring, and it's a really worrying thing. Of course, today things have changed, but back then we didn't create any chances. And on top of that, we couldn't defend. For a team that sits back so much, we can't defend at times, which is really quite worrying. And as I say, Arsenal's 3-0 win didn't flatter them at all. They deserved it fully. And we looked like a side that was really slipping down and destined for a relegation dogfight, which for a side like Newcastle, after the torrid years we've had, 2 relegations in the last 10, it shouldn't be happening again. We should be learning our lessons, but apparently we're not. And again, in the next game, nothing changed again. It was Aston Villa away. It was another 2-0. It was a 2-0 loss this time. And once again, it was a dire performance. There was no fight, no drive, no hunger, no real chances created.
Nothing of that game comes to mind.
No.
Nothing comes to mind at all of that game, of what we did.
I think
one shot on target. I mean, it's standard for us these days.
I think Jack Grealish was heard on the microphone at one point saying, just keep it moving. These are, well, no, there was some words we probably shouldn't say at that point, but he's right.
He's absolutely spot on.
He was absolutely right, and it just summarises the sort of rot and run we've descended into, and just to watch that, it's been horrible, hasn't it?
But like they say, Aston Villa are another club who are doing strides better than us, but in terms of a club standpoint, like, we should be at least on their level, at least. I mean, like, we put a point on the Twitter that when we won the championship, they finished 13th in that championship table. Jack Grealish actually won us the title when he scored against Brighton. So, I mean, how have we not jumped any further? And they just keep flying on. I mean, obviously, a bit controversial. They should have got relegated last season, but I mean, it's just horrible to watch, because these clubs that we should at least be on par with are running over us, just absolutely running over us. I know only 2-0, but we didn't stand a chance. We didn't get a foothold on it.
No, Aston Villa looked very comfortable the whole game. Of course, the one positive of that game was the reintroduction of Alain Saint-Maximin, who has gone on to have a good effect since he's come back. But yeah, just Aston. I think if you look at club size, Aston Villa and Newcastle are probably quite similar. Certainly in terms of their fan base, in terms of their history. But the fact that we were so far ahead of them in that championship season, and how they're suddenly now ahead of us, that it doesn't make any sense. But it's the sad reality that is Newcastle United.
It's not even just the fact that they're ahead of us. It's the way they look. They just look miles better. Like just miles better. Not even just on the league standpoint, but just from a club structure, from the way they're set up, tactics, just everything. They look like Champions League when they play us. It's mental.
It did. And we actually look like a side who should be in a relegation dogfight. So the fact that we're all complaining,
100%.
The fact that we're all complaining, and yes, it is valid complaints and criticism towards the side, but it just showed that the issues that we have are indeed real. Just on that point, where do you put the issues down to? Do you blame the manager? Because I certainly have done in recent weeks a lot. I think our squad is good enough for. I've maintained the squad we currently have is good enough for a top 10 finish under a more progressive style of coaching.
Yeah, well, I mean, to bring the mighty Rafa in, he obviously had a worse side and he finished 10th. So there's no reason why we can't challenge for at least those kind of just before the Europa League, around about the 10th or 8th kind of spot.
Yeah.
In terms of who I bring it down to, obviously Steve Bruce is an easy one to throw the kitchen sink at. But I mean, ultimately, it's Mike Ashley who's employed people like this. Yeah, so it's the hierarchy that then ruin it. And I mean, Steve Bruce isn't a great manager, but he has been put in an absolute rough position. He should never have got the job in the first place. No. So ultimately, it is the top of the club. That's we
all said at the start when he was appointed that it wasn't a good appointment, and it just showed a lack of ambition to move on from the legacy of Rafa, to not try and keep building and instead go backwards. And it's probably shown that the fact that Aston Villa, who sacked Steve Bruce when they were in the Championship, brought in Dean Smith, and now have jumped ahead of us as we've brought in Steve Bruce and we've lost Rafa. That just it probably summarises the sort of the swap in position between us and Aston Villa. In the next game, we lost again at home.
It shows the ambition.
It does. In the next game, we lost 2-1 at home to Leeds. We actually managed to score a goal, which was positive after a run of not scoring. Miguel Almiron getting on the score sheet. But this is a game where I think we should have got something from the game. Certainly, the first half wasn't brilliant again. Leeds did what they did, play how they played, and with free flowing attacking football, and got the lead in the first half with, I think it was through Rafinha. Yeah. Second half, Alan St. Maximin comes on, changes the game completely, in my opinion. We get the equaliser, Miguel Almiron scores, but then our shaky defence lets Leeds straight back ahead again, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think based on the previous result with Leeds, we always knew going into that it was going to be a tough game, just purely based on how we set up and how they set up. Obviously, they're a very attacking side. They like to get in your face, get the goals in. No matter how many they concede, they will try and score anyways. Whereas us, we try to just make sure we don't concede. The goals might come, but just make sure we don't concede.
Yeah.
But no, you're absolutely right. In that second half, when Alan St. Maxim came on, it looked like a completely different Newcastle side. You know, I actually enjoyed watching Newcastle play for the first time in months. I mean, I remember the last time I'd watched them play and actually enjoyed. Probably, I always go back to the 4-1 against Bournemouth at the end of last season.
I agree. The last time. That was the last time we really did play well. I'd possibly argue that the 2-0 winner away to West Ham on the opening day of this season was a good performance as well.
It was a good performance, but West Ham were in, and I know obviously Bournemouth were getting relegated, but West Ham were in a bit of turmoil. I know there was a lot of issues in the dressing room and stuff like that, so we played them at a very good time, because obviously, again, they're another club that are flying high now.
Doing really well. They're doing fantastic at West Ham. But that game against Bournemouth at the end of last season, we taught. I mean, Bournemouth were destined to go down at this point, but albeit, in fair play to Newcastle, we tore them apart and played very well.
But that Leeds second half, I mean, we took the game to them. The second half, we took the game to them. We got in the face. We got loads of shots off. The goal from Almiron is a great goal. You know, winning the ball high up the pitch, the little layoff from Callum Wilson. It's one of the better goals he's scored this season. You know, in the short period that we've got. We are very unlucky to not nick something in the end. Definitely.
Was still a worry to me, because even though we played well in the second half, we still didn't manage to get anything out of the game, which is a bit of a worry.
Wow.
The fact that we're still not picking up points, but of course. Typical. That brings us on to today's result, which, as we mentioned at the start, we've actually managed to finally win a game, and not only win a game, but win a game away from home to a top 7 side in Everton.
A Carlo Ancelotti Champions League winner. It just had the double done over him by Steve Bruce.
Yes, I mean, I've just been having a lot of chats with some of the people after this match. I put a lot of that win down to, obviously the players played very well. Callum Wilson was fantastic. Miguel Almiron was fantastic as well.
Yeah.
But the introduction of this Graham Jones, this new coach. Now, it's an interesting one, because you don't know how much influence he's going to have had in the time he's been in. But certainly, I think it's enough to have had some sort of an impact, because the Newcastle side we saw today was miles better than anything we've seen in the past 2 months. There was in the first half, we pressed high up the field, we won the ball back in dangerous areas, and we created chances. Callum Wilson was unlucky not to score from a header in the first half, and of course then went on to get 2 goals. Probably could have got a hat-trick if he had not have hit the post with his other chance. So and another chance is when it was still 0-0 as well, when he just put it wide. He could have possibly been offside at that point, but I'm not entirely sure. But as I said, Miguel Almiron was good, and I just think that this Gateshead Graham, this man,
I
think there has to be some influence there, because for us to suddenly be that good after being that rubbish for the last few weeks can't just be down to the Steve Bruce suddenly finding the formula, in my opinion, because
it's very evident he's had some impact on that game. I mean, sorry to cut you off there, but some of the players that were kind of jumping out there that haven't, you know, Jamal Lewis had probably the best game he's had in a Newcastle shirt. Looks very shaky the past few games, but he's, you know, whether it's Graham Jones, I don't know, but he's getting down on the sides, obviously winning the ball in the left back position. He played very well. Obviously, you mentioned Miguel Almiron having a great game, obviously playing in his natural position by looks of things, rather than kind of being shoved on the left or right mid. Isaac Hayden being put back into centre mid rather than right back or centre back or wherever Steve Bruce sees fit. You know, looking very natural. Jeff Hendrick, I think, has kind of kicked on these last couple of games. I think he's been.
There wasn't really any bad performances in the team at all today, to be honest.
No, and obviously Callum Wilson getting a couple of goals. I seen in his post-match interview that he's gutted that he didn't get 3 or 4, which is the attitude that you love to hear.
It's a great mentality.
Considering
to have.
We've scored no goals this season, so yeah.
Yeah, no,
it was a fantastic performance across the board, and that massive 3 points into where we are at the minute.
It is. It's a really big 3 points indeed. Certainly, we're not out of it yet, and we need to build on that. The game against Crystal Palace on Tuesday is massive. Of course, we beat Crystal Palace in the reverse fixture 2-0 at Selhurst Park. So if we can do the double of them, that, to an extent, if I look at the table, sees us, you know, we're on 22 points now after that game today. If we win that, we're going to 25, which, if nothing changes, takes us up towards sort of 12, 13, 14th, which, you know, it's just below mid-table.
Yeah, so, I know. There's not a lot in it across the board.
If we beat Crystal Palace on Tuesday, we go ahead of Crystal Palace because they're currently sat on 24 points, which, you know, considering as bad as it's been for the past month and the lack of results and points we've had, this crazy season that's been under COVID regulations with no crowds, it shows once again that even after such a shocking run for Newcastle, a couple of results can absolutely change things around completely.
Well, yeah, and I go back to the point I was making before. It's the results are one thing, but it's the way that they were played today in comparison to previous games. If we can just keep doing that, if I can have a team that I actually enjoy watching, you know, yeah, we might have some odd hiccups here and there, but if we can just play some football, get some goals, you know, we're not asking for a great deal. We're just asking for a bit of a performance. And today, if we can carry on doing what we did today, we'll definitely get some points on the board. We'll definitely stay up, and I'll enjoy watching us again.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. That's what annoys me the most about some of the punditry and some of the things that I said about Newcastle, that we expect too much. We really don't. You know, at the minute we're watching utterly crap football. That, you know, that there's no possession on the ball for most of the game from Newcastle. We can't even sometimes string 2 passes together. It really is that bad. Never mind get a shot on target. And to watch that today was just the complete and utter opposite. It was a real juxtaposition for what we've been watching. And so it really is a positive. And if we can build on that and get another couple of good results like that, and it'll really do us the world of good, not only in results-wise, but just in confidence-wise, because football's a confidence game and always has been. And if your side has confidence, they're gonna go out into every game thinking they can win. And I think the problem has been a lot that in this run that we've been on, we've been going into games, and then suddenly, as soon as we've conceded the first goal, it's just been, you know, heads down and heads have dropped. And I think a result like that today, and if we can get another one against Palace on Tuesday, will be so important, and hopefully we'll put us on the road to safety. I mean, the fact that we're even talking about safety already is a little bit depressing. But
you're saying there that hopefully we can get above Crystal Palace, but I mean, we should be above Crystal Palace. No disrespect to them, but in terms of where we should be, we shouldn't be hoping for results like this to push us, you know, a couple of places above the relegation zone. It's a bit sad, really. But yeah, really you mentioned Graham Jones because Graham Jones obviously comes in. It looks as though, you know, if Steve Bruce was to get the sack or Steve Bruce was to move aside, that he would step in. Yeah. But I mean, on the touchline, he was
the
front and center. He was shouting the tactics. If you looked at the touchline, you would certainly assume he was the man in charge. And yes, it was a bit bizarre seeing Steve Bruce kind of sit back and let this guy take over his team supposedly. But yeah, it was great performance.
Great performance.
Go on, Graham Jones.
Yeah. There's been a lot of Graham Jones's black and white army. Certainly.
Yeah.
We managed to actually just at times, you know, we pressed high. We held onto the ball, could actually string passes together and create chances, which is something that we haven't seen for weeks at Newcastle. As I say, a real positive there. And you know, if we look ahead to the month ahead, obviously February, which we will have another podcast coming up at the end of February. In February, we've got Crystal Palace at home on Tuesday, as we mentioned. Then we've got Southampton at home, Chelsea away, Man United away, and then Wolves at home. Obviously, Chelsea, Man United away stand out as being games where you probably don't expect to pick up anything.
Yeah,
or a point at most. But we beat Palace on Tuesday, hopefully. Southampton, they were doing quite well, but they're currently sat 11th and now only 7 points ahead of us. So a win against Palace and win against them suddenly sees us practically on the same points as them.
Yeah, it's a crazy season. There's very little, like I say, in it in terms of just across the board. Obviously, Sheffield United fell off a little bit, but even their recent win, they're only 3 points behind West Brom, who are now losing. So it's it's anyone's game really at this point.
I think just the season as a whole, the lack of crowds has had so much influence and impact on some performances. It's a very strange season. The crowds certainly do have an impact. I think Sheffield United would probably be doing a bit better if they'd had their crowd in, because they've got a good fan base to Sheffield United, and I think that would help carry them to a few more results, certainly more than they've had already. I think the fact that crowds haven't been in has probably been maybe a good thing for Newcastle and Steve Bruce. Because
definitely.
Certainly Steve Bruce, because I think there's some of the abuse he would have got from the crowds would have been quite bad.
It wouldn't have been pretty. It wouldn't have been pretty if there was 50k fans there. Steve Bruce with the performances as well, because it's like I say, the results aside, just being in that stadium for an hour and a half, watching what we've watched on the TV for the last few months, I mean, they wouldn't get away with it. Some of the players probably wouldn't make it at the stadium with the fans there.
Yeah, although then you do wonder then, if the crowds are in, do all those performances the same? Because do the crowds change it? That's what no one will ever know. That's the thing.
Yes, we've got no idea.
It's such a crazy season. The lack of fans and the lack of crowds obviously has had a massive impact. And who knows how things would look if they were back in there. And I'm sure next season, hopefully next season, crowds do somehow manage to get back in stadiums.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully things can return to some sort of normality. But it has been a crazy season. As we said, January has been a pretty poor month for Newcastle, but with a nice positive end, and hopefully we can go into February and build on that result today and pick up a few more results. So Dylan, any final thoughts on that?
Well, just a quick overview. Obviously, rough month. We've got a nice little end to it. I mean, there was 2 cup exits as well in that month for Newcastle, both pretty torrid defeats, one against a second string championship side. Mm-hmm. But I don't go into those cup competitions expecting to win them at all. Just want a performance, which unfortunately hasn't come this month.
Against a side like Brentford, you expect to be winning, really. But
yeah. Again, no disrespect to them. They play good football in the championship, but it wasn't even their main team. I know Ivan Toney and that weren't playing. Obviously, they've lost players like Ben Rama. So definitely should have been a semi-final at least for us there. But well, what can you do?
As we say, it's a pretty poor month, but a nice positive end, and hopefully in a month's time when we record the next one of these in February, we'll be with a few more positive results picked up and be sitting a bit more pretty in mid-table in the season.
Hopefully clear of the relegation zone.
That's
all I want.
That's the main thing. I think I fully agree, and then just to remain safe and see what the summer brings, and if anything changes in the ownership, you'd like to think so, but
who knows at this point? Who actually knows?
Who knows what's going on behind the scenes? We'd like to think there'd be some sort of change, but the main thing now is we go into February on the back of a good result against Everton, and hopefully the form that we showed today can continue and we'll pick up a few more points. So thank you all very much for watching. Dylan, thank you very much for joining me. I will see you in a month's time for the next edition of this. Hopefully we'll have another guest. Maybe hopefully we might get Johnny on. We don't know this at the moment. We can try, but on that note, thank you all very much for watching, and how are the lads?